Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Women Arsecast on Arseblog.com with me, Tim Stillman, looking back on Sunday's rollercoaster 4-3 win away at Manchester City in a game that put some years on my life, it must be said, and a great day for the club overall, of course, because the men went and beat the same opponents 5-1 later in the day. So total score of 9-4 Arsenal v City on a double header of a Sunday. And as much as I'm kind of bummed that I've missed both men's games against City because of these double headers, I do think it makes a lot of sense, actually, and I kind of commend Sky actually for doing the double header. But anyway, we're here to talk about Arsenal's 4-3 win over Manchester City, and as ever, to do that, joined by Jamie Spanger. Jamie, how are you doing, and how did you experience that game?
Hey Tim, I'm good. I'm coming down from the high of Super Sunday in that doubleheader because Maya wasn't good. I was actually covering the City Arsenal women's game from home and then quickly travelled over to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, unfortunately, and watched the men's game from the press box. So you can imagine any Arsenal fan watching that game in the Spurs press box is a little bit hard. It's hard when Skelly's scoring and doing the Haaland celebration and having to keep that to myself. And then I probably watched the most boring game of the weekend, Premier League WSL combined. So it closed off a very exciting day with probably some of the worst, most slow football. So thank you Spurs and United for that. But what a day, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched the men's game on the train home on my iPad, and I was actually sat next to a Manchester United fan, and he was quite happy to see the goals go in as well. So I didn't really have to conceal the smile on my face. But yeah, I mean, this game was a real doozy. 4-3, City equalised twice in the game and Arsenal come back every time. They're 2-0 up after 8 minutes, and it was a real basketball game. And we'll get into all of the things that made it such a basketball game, basically both teams kind of doing away with the idea of midfield altogether. But before we go into the game, it has been deadline day since the last time we recorded together. Andrew and I did a pod together on Friday, just kind of rounding up Arsenal in the January transfer window and a little bit on reporting on it. And, Thursday evening, it went off. We had Jenna Nyswanger confirmed Thursday afternoon, but we all knew that was coming. I don't think most of us expected Manchester City and Arsenal to swap a couple of players on loan, with Laura Wienreuter going to Man City and Chloe Kelly coming to Arsenal. Let's deal with Chloe Kelly first and get your take on it. What's your take on that signing?
Well, firstly, I think when you're on the right side of deadline day action, it makes it the most exciting day ever. When you're not on the right side of it, you just want it to be over. So it was interesting to be eating my dinner in front of the television and then seeing that Sky Sports reported that Man City had just accepted a bid from Arsenal. So that was a bit of a twist and a turn of events because I think we all expected her to land at United. But I think for a loan signing for Arsenal, it makes a lot of sense. I'm actually quite happy with it. I think it adds some depth in an area where Arsenal are really lacking right now. It's just a bit of a bummer because we know that she obviously couldn't have played yesterday. She can't play this week against Man City on Thursday. She then can't play against London City on Sunday. So there's a lot of cup ties, whether it's the FA Cup or the Subway Cup, which is a little bit difficult. But however, it does mean that there's rotation between the cups and the league. And I think when you have an experienced player like Chloe Kelly, she knows the club. We spoke to Renee on Friday, and the biggest thing she said when I asked her about Chloe Kelly's signing was she knows this club and she knows the culture, and I think that tie-in's really important. So it does feel like, she'll be welcomed and she knows what Arsenal is striving to do and succeed. So I think having that experience is really, really good. I'm pleased that it's a loan signing as well. I think if we had thrown a lot of money at Chloe Kelly on deadline day, I wouldn't be too excited about that. So yeah, I'm pleased with this signing, and I think she will make an impact when she is finally allowed to play.
Yeah, absolutely. It was clarified yesterday. She's not cup tied for the League Cup. So if Arsenal get to the final, she will be able to play in the final. It's the terms of her loan deal that rule her out of the semi-final, which I didn't know until Arsenal clarified it yesterday. But I think the bottom line, I'm with you. I'm not sure I'd have bought, but as a loan signing, Arsenal are light in that area, and really it's just a real shame she wasn't available a week ago, because I think coming off the bench at least against Chelsea could have made like a real difference in that game. But yeah, the bottom line, does she make the squad stronger? I mean, yes, is the answer to that. And then there's Laura Wienreuter going to Manchester City. I mean, I think we've been expecting for most of the window, given the fact that she's barely even warmed up from the bench, let alone got on, that she was going to go. But City, that felt like a surprise, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Like you said, I think we did expect her to part ways this month. However, going to Man City was a turn of events I didn't see coming. I think obviously for her, the biggest thing right now is leaving Arsenal on loan or permanently, whatever it may be, is important for her because she's just struggling to get minutes. It's Emily Fox she's trying to get, a game over, and that's not an easy task for anyone in the world. I do think the move to Man City is a little bit interesting because although they're so low in defenders and they're thin on the ground, and we've seen that given the game yesterday, Kirsten Kasperai is a hard player to get out of the lineup as well. So I think if you're looking for minutes, going in for maybe someone that's pretty on par with Emily Fox in terms of talent, it's an interesting move for her personally, and I'll be interested to see. I mean, they do have a lot of competitions. They're in the FA Cup, they're in the Champions League, so I understand that there'll be a rotation that's necessary. But I do think if you're moving to a club, the Man City one confuses me a little bit from a personal point of view. I understand why City did it. They need depth there. But yeah, I was a little bit taken by surprise in terms of the destination.
Yeah, I think this is just one where it's so late. And to your point, yeah, Kasperai is a difficult player to dislodge, but it's just a case of I get no minutes or I get some minutes kind of thing. And actually Gareth Taylor did say in her unveiling that she can play at centre-back, which I'm not sure I've ever seen before. But that's certainly an area where they do lack depth at the moment. And she can play at left-back as well. So I think they probably see her as a bit of I'd be very surprised if that was made permanent. I think that's a kind of little bit of a short-term marriage of convenience for both players, really. But that's kind of deadline day anyway, and kind of straight into this game. And looking at the lineups, I was hoping and praying that the half an hour Lia Walti got against Bristol City meant that she'd be fit to start, but clearly not. She went off with that calf problem at Brighton and clearly still not entirely recovered. We know Kim Little now is going to be out for a couple of weeks because she's had surgery on a couple of broken fingers. So we had that Mariona Cooney cross, double axis of chaos, really, which brought a lot of rewards for Arsenal, but a lot of risk as well. Lotta Wubben-Moy coming in at centre half, Steph Catley at left back with Katie McCabe finishing her suspension. And then Russo on the wing as well with Stina Blackstenius up front. So plenty of intrigue in the starting lineup. What did you make of it?
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of points where I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm not too pleased with this. And this has nothing to do with the tactical decisions made by the manager, because I think obviously a lot of those changes were forced. Katie McCabe's suspension obviously pulled Catley out to left back, and that was where I had the most concern. The midfield was definitely concerning, but I think yesterday, although I come on this podcast every week and speak about how much I love Steph Catley and how she's the greatest player of all time, I think yesterday did kind of prove that she's running out of steam in terms of the fullback position. She's getting beaten for speed. And that's why she's thrived so much at centre back. So I was nervous about that, and I think we kind of saw that transpire. But the midfield, we've spoken about Cooney Cross and Mariona having this high risk, high reward, but then it can be a little bit detrimental. And I thought Keira had a good first half, but it did feel like there was a lot of tempo and control lost. And obviously we'll speak about Lia Walti and the impact she made. So yeah, it was an interesting lineup. And Russo on the wing, I'm not a fan of, I didn't like, and I'm sure we'll speak about that more, but it was a lot of changes that we saw happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a bit of a knock-on effect as well. I think Arsenal look absolutely fine with one of Kim or Lia Walti, but without both and without Victoria Pelova. Like we played like that at Liverpool, and it was a very, very transitional game. But Liverpool didn't quite have the quality to punish, whereas City do. I think, to your point as well, there's another knock-on effect, which is Katie McCabe. When she's at left back, she can come into midfield and support that effort. But without her, Steph Catley can't really do that inverting side. So I think had Katie McCabe been available, that might have offset some of that with her coming into midfield. Russo on the wing, I mean, that's just a lack of options. But Stina, I asked Renee in the press conference whether Stina might have started anyway, given this is the fourth time she scored a winning goal against Man City, by the way. And we know why Stina plays well against City, because they play a very high line, but they also give up their channels. And if you go back and watch the game they play at Villa last week, go and watch that Chastity Grant goal, because Chastity Grant just runs from the halfway line in that channel completely unopposed. So I kind of think Stina might have started anyway, maybe with Russo behind her with more availability. But yeah, there were a lot of absences, I think, which is why I'm a little bit more... I thought it was a very ragged performance in a lot of senses, but I kind of forgive it just because I think there were so many absences that led to that. But you talked there, Jamie, about the risk reward of like a Mariona Cooney cross midfield. And again, this is not to get on either player. Like, it's just about the attributes you have as a player. And that is not a good blend. I think you put Mariona with Lia or Kim, fine. Put Keira Cooney cross with Lia or Kim, fine. But together it was maybe a bit much. But 42 seconds it took for the reward part of that to really come to the boil. And I mean, we saw, Jamie, didn't we, when they played Manchester United, City, very, very susceptible, very vulnerable to the high press, and Arsenal punish it literally instantly.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks that Lia Alexandria will be begging to forget. She obviously scored the own goal as well against Aston Villa. So, look, I think, not to analyse City too much, but I think Lia Alexandria is a player I've looked at for recent seasons and said, wow, she's an outstanding centre-back. Like, she's probably one of the best in the WSL, but I do think that she's not someone that raises the level of the team. Turns out she's probably someone that just works really well with Alex Greenwood, and we've seen her struggle a lot. And look, I think a lot of that onus went on her, but I think the ball from Kiara Keating, it took too long. It meant that Arsenal were able to set up the press better, and Lia Alexandria could have taken her touch outside. She should have, but I don't really know why you're trying to be techie around Mariona, because she's going to steal the ball. And look, I think it looks like a blunder, but if you watch the goal back, the finish is like sublime. I don't think everyone on the Arsenal team would have been able to put that bottom corner, curl it around the keeper. So it was definitely a City blunder. I don't think it was just on the defender. I think the goalkeeper took far too long. I think Alexandria was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. But what a finish from Mariona, and that's top shelf quality that we know she has.
Doorbell music, 1 second. Yeah, absolutely. And if you watch it back, actually Mariona goes to press like immediately, and then Alexandria goes back to Kiara Keating, and she kind of stops and she goes again the second time around. And yeah, I mean, Mariona, perhaps in deeper positions, as we see with one of the City goals, some of the risk reward, the dial's too high in those deeper areas. But one of the things we really see about Mariona is she is excellent at winning the ball back, and her, just go and look at her FBref bars, as it were, on this, because she really wins the ball back at an amazing rate. And I'm with you. I almost think maybe Russo is the only other player in the squad I totally trust in that scenario, in that position. It's a great finish. And then, and the other thing about City, they keep conceding early goals. They're conceding a lot from kickoffs, actually, which is something Freddie Cardi picked up, that they're often conceding as soon as they score, as soon as someone else scores. We saw this in the United game as well. And then Arsenal get a free kick, again, because they commit to the high press and City are a bit ruffled. Keira Cooney cross, swings one in, Lotta Wubben-Moy comes out. Kiara Keating's nowhere. Gareth Taylor was asked about starting Kiara Keating again, and he really pushed back against some of those questions and said, blame me, I'm the one that puts her in, and all of that. But 2-0 after 8 minutes, and we should also have a word for Lotta's celebration as well.
Yeah, I honestly think this goal, what a ball, first of all. Like, Keira is getting so, like, her strength on set pieces is improving, and I think that comes with extended game time, and she's curled that, like, back post. It's a brilliant ball in. But for Lotta to put her body on the line as well, it's a towering header. It's something that we haven't really seen Arsenal be able to capitalise on, because, like, Tim, we speak a lot about aerial threat. So for the fact that she's really put her body on the line, because Kiara Keating, like you said, Tim, wasn't there, came out too late, takes her out. She flips like a bloody Nokia phone. So I'm glad she didn't fall on her head. I think it's an exceptional goal. I think there's a lack of City defending again. There's a lack of discipline. I think Gareth Taylor won't budge on playing Kiara Keating when she's had a couple bad games, and I don't think it's working out. I understand wanting to back your player when she's in, poor form. However, she's a young goalkeeper, and sometimes you need to nurture these players. And doesn't feel like he's doing that. Sometimes you have to concede, because their backup keeper in Yamashita is excellent. So I do think I'm glad he's taken the responsibility for that. I didn't understand that tactical decision, but yeah, the celebration was beautiful as well. And I'm really glad she's doing that, obviously, for British Sign Language and being able to, include and make football an inclusive space. And Frida also did the same celebration. So yeah, it's lovely to see. And I'm glad we have a player like Lotta, playing and representing Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. So to clarify for people who might not have seen it, or like she does a little kind of a gesture on the cannon, which is Gunners in British Sign Language. And a lot of this goes back to her friendship with Izzy, who's she kind of young deaf girl who she did some content with around England Lionesses. And you might remember Lotta scored a goal last season and did like a celebration in honour of Izzy, and now kind of doing this and then going on Sky and saying that was what she was doing as well, for like inclusive goal celebration. And to your point, Frida does it as well. And I think, in the aftermath of the Miles Lewis Selly, as it were, in the men's game, I think this one just as lovely for very different reasons. And you're right, I think a lot of us have a lot of pride to have a player like Lotta Woolbourne-Moy who is constantly thinking and talking about things like this. But at this point, it's 2-0 after 8 minutes, and then Arsenal have a chance to make it 3-0 with Stina, and it's a last gasp block by Rebecca Knack. And at this point, I mean, I don't know about you, my thinking is this could be 3, 4, 5, like we've got to go for them type thing. It doesn't shape up like that. But I mean, I thought City were weak. I know you said were vulnerable, rather, particularly defensively. I know you said to me before the game that you were confident. I mean, what was your feeling at that point about how the game might turn out?
Yeah, I think when Stina had that, it was almost a one-on-one, and then, like you said, Knack has come in for the sliding challenge. But I think when that happened, Tim, I honestly thought this is going to be a bloodbath. It looked like Arsenal were that confident, dynamic version of themselves. It felt like the players were working together. And I do think we've seen, especially in the Manchester derby, we saw City drop their heads. Although they got those 2 goals back, they weren't like brilliant displays of football. So in my eyes, I really did think Arsenal had the driver's seat on the game. I thought the tempo, it felt like, we've seen it under Renee in the Renaissance, so to speak. We've seen Arsenal really carry off the back of momentum and work through that and use that in their advantage. So it did feel like this is going to be a bloodbath, and obviously it turned out to not be the case. It became a much more even affair. However, I was very confident heading into the fixture, Tim. I can't lie, watching City against Aston Villa. Obviously, we saw the Manchester derby, and that's one we talk about. But watching City against Aston Villa, I thought this team is beatable. This team's gettable. I think anyone with an all right forward line can exploit the vulnerabilities of their defense. So I was confident and very confident, and then I nearly got disappointed, but all okay in the end.
Yeah, I mean, City, bearing in mind Leicester conceded 4 goals to Everton yesterday. Leicester have conceded 1 more goal than Manchester City. And then you look at like United. I mean, you said you watched a very boring United game. They've conceded 5 goals this season, and you look at how many City have conceded. It's not difficult to work out what they're vulnerable. However, they're obviously very good going forward. Figino, Miedema, they're essentially both teams are really playing without like a proper. I mean, Yui Hasegawa is a 6 now, but she used to be a number 8. Like Gilles Roord has started her career as a striker. Jess Park was an attacking winger. They're both number 8s, and you've got Miedema, Figino. And then on the left side, you've got Mary Fowler. Like their City's talent is incredibly top heavy, particularly without Alex Greenwood. And they start to come back into the game, which I think you kind of expect when you're away from home. You've gone 2-0 up. You probably will sit in. They probably will come at you. But they make it 2-1 quite quickly. And it's Figino with the cross and Mary Fowler on the back post. I mean, on one hand, I felt like this was coming. On the other hand, I look at the actual goal and I don't have too many problems with it from an Arsenal perspective because no one's really out of position. It's a really good cross, and it's a good header from a player who's running onto the ball while Emily Fox is going backwards. I mean, I felt like the goal was coming, but I didn't feel like the goal was a massive error when it did come, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. It didn't feel like, oh, we've let this moment slip, because I do think it was just a classy goal. I think Fabinho's ball into the back post was exceptional. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans need to remember that there's a lot of worry, I think I've seen in the discourse online about, oh, Fabinho's going to be a real threat on Thursday, and you need to worry that Katie McCabe will be back. Like, remember that Katie McCabe will be back on the side. I expect there to be changes there. But the ball's perfect. I think Mary Fowler's finished. It's a well-timed run. She doesn't have to do a lot except to get her head basically in front of it. My only worry slightly is maybe Emily Fox's height makes me a little bit concerned sometimes in terms of playing the back post. I think we've seen her get caught out and get a little bit lucky a few times, and bringing in a player like Jenna Niswanger, for anyone that doesn't know, he's 5'2". It's a little bit worrying in terms of that department, but I think it's just a brilliant ball. Like, it's a brilliant ball. It's a well-timed run. It's one of those goals that, yeah, well done to City. And like you said, Tim, I don't think there's a lot to criticise from an Arsenal point of view.
Yeah, but certainly what follows, I think there is some criticism to go around. And one of the things City were doing really well was they build on the left. They bring Wahhabi in, Miedema goes over there. Like, they really pack out the left. They drag you over, and then they hit that big switch to Fabinho, and they were doing that a lot. And Fabinho was also able to run off the back of Mariona sometimes, like come a little bit in field. And the thing is with Mariona and Cooney Cross is once they're aware of the danger, they run back, but they don't see it in advance. Whereas Walti, Kim Little, they see it before it happens, and that's just the players they are. Like, you can't have a go at a player for not being something for not being something they're not. But between Mary Fowler's goal and half time, City have 6 shots to Arsenal's 1, and I remember, I think my abiding memory of the last kind of, 40, like at least 10 minutes of the half, was I kept looking at the scoreboard and I kept wanting to see that it was going to be half time, because it really felt like we were hanging on and we just completely lost control of the game.
Yeah, 100%. It felt like the first half was 2 halves in itself. It felt like Arsenal really did lose the momentum, and City were able to capitalise on it. And I find it interesting as well, because I know we speak a lot about the midfield, and obviously there was one midfield change in particular that changed the game for Arsenal in the second half. However, I felt like Jill Roord and Jess Park had a very quiet outing. I don't think they did a lot and made a lot of impact. I think a lot of it just came from City able to control the play in the way that, Viv, we know, can drop back. I think Mary Fowler's really, really good because she can invert as well. So it felt like they were overloading Keira and Mariona because there were vulnerabilities there, and defensively, they're not ones like you said, Tim. It's such a good point. They know when to go and do it once it's happening, but they don't really see it happening. So it felt like City were able to overload that, even though Roord and Park weren't probably it wasn't the biggest maestro performances from either of them. But yeah, no, it felt like a very hard last 20 minutes because City were knocking and Arsenal looked dishevelled. It felt like there wasn't even a formation at some point. So to get to half time still in the lead, and then obviously it wasn't a very good start to the half.
Yeah, indeed. And I saw they swapped Russo and Mead at one point as well. And then, I saw after one of their shots, Lia having a word with Keira, I think, about the overload. And I think, Keira was getting dragged out a bit too much towards the touchline, and Lia was asking her just to stay in a little bit and pick up some of those runners. So it was a bit dishevelled. And I was fully expecting a change in personnel at halftime. Now, you don't always have to make a substitution to make a change. You can tweak things, but I kind of felt like Arsenal just didn't have the personnel to make a significant tweak. To be fair, when you look at the stats of the game, City have 14 shots, 10 of them come in the first half, and then they manage 3 until Lia Walti comes on. So it does come down even without the personnel change. And I think we probably feel differently about it at the time because City actually score 2 goals. Like, in their quietest period of the game is when they score. And actually in their noisiest part of the game, where they have 6 shots without response, they don't score. So it's kind of a bit strange. But I said I spent the last 10 minutes glancing at the scoreboard. I spent the whole of half time looking at the warm-up because I desperately wanted Lia Walti to come on. I know she wasn't fit enough to start, and I was thinking, I hope she's got 45 minutes. Clearly, they didn't think she had, but I know I posted this at half time. I said I'd even bring Laia Kadina on at the moment. But I think looking back at the game, actually, Arsenal do kind of sort things out. It's just City scored twice randomly with situations they don't really create. But were you surprised there wasn't a personnel change at halftime?
I wasn't completely surprised, Tim. Like you said, it didn't feel like Arsenal had the bench. It didn't feel like Renee really had the option. I was like you. I was hoping maybe Lia can play 45, but the fact that she didn't start, I thought we might see her a little bit later than halftime. The other thing I thought, and I know a lot of people are against this, was maybe bringing Kadina on and playing Williamson next to Keira. Mm-hmm. There's always a chance to drop her into midfield when you need a little bit more control. However, yeah, I wasn't too surprised. It was annoying, but it wasn't to anyone's it wasn't anyone's fault that there wasn't a personnel change, and we saw it later, and it did transpire into something positive at least.
Yeah, it did. You know, Arsenal fixed, and Renee said to me at half time. Sorry, she didn't say it to me at half time. I asked her about like half time and how they stopped that switch to Figino in particular, and she said, I won't go into detail into how we did it, but they kind of did. But City equalise at, again from nothing, really, and it's really frustrating. And we talked about the risk reward of Mariona in a deeper role, and as much as we really got the advantage after 43 seconds, it's a giveaway from her. To be fair, I wouldn't put it all on her. I think Lotta has a chance to pass the ball a bit more firmly before that and kind of plays with her food a little bit. But, I mean, you give the ball to Vivian Miedema inside the penalty area, there's only one thing that's going to happen, really.
Yeah, as soon as it was her that kind of won the scuffle back, I thought, yeah, that's not great. That's not great. We've seen this film before. Yeah, I think, like we said, it's this high risk, high reward. It didn't pay off, and it's a goal that I think, although it's really frustrating to concede, and I think had that and the penalty led to City winning, I'd be absolutely fuming about it, because you don't want to give a team and a forward line like Man City these options to score and these opportunities where they're not creating really, like they are creating, but they're not capitalizing on the opportunities that they're creating. So it did feel like, that's not something you want to see happen when a game's this tight and City are able to kind of control the momentum of the fixture. But again, look, I think that it just comes down to, it's hard to analyze when you're playing with Cooney, Cross and Mariona, because you know that that's not going to be the plan going forward. So I don't want to sit here and think, this is really, really bad. We need to make sure that this is full and this is foolproof and they're going to fix the holes that these two are creating, because I think it's not a partnership we're going to see when we have Lia Walti and Kim Little fit. So I don't want to spend too much time over analyzing it. I think we'll see it against certain oppositions and it will reap its rewards against, WSL teams lower in the table. But I'm not going to say, this is terrible and we need to make sure that they're like doing defensive work better, because I don't think that this is the long-term plan for Renee. I don't think she's going to implement this against big sides like Man City unless she absolutely has to. So it's a goal that you say, that's really crap. But look, we won't overanalyze it too much because it's not something we see her do a lot.
Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes how I feel about this as well, in terms of this game is 100% about result for Arsenal, because to your point, we're just not going to line up like this. Like, I'd be shocked if we saw this starting 11 again. Like, a lot of it's enforced, and there's players coming back. And not only that, in terms of the league, Chelsea and Man City are out the way now. We don't play them again. We've played United. We got United at home on the last day. So Arsenal now have a real run of very winnable fixtures. It's basically, because the fixture list flips, it's basically the run of games where Renee gets 10 out of 11, in terms of 10 wins and a draw out of 11. Like, we've got that fixture list a bit mirrored now, which is why it was just important to get through this game and get the result. But also because if you look at the two teams, this is not Arsenal's team for the remainder of the season. City, that's their team, right? It's Laura Wienreuter's going in. That's kind of it, really, because Alex Greenwood's not going to be back anytime soon. Lauren Hemp, I think, should be back before the end of the season, but not in the next 3 or 4 games or so. So that's City for the foreseeable future. This is not Arsenal for the foreseeable future. So I can forgive a bit of a basketball game where we come out on the right end of it. And we deserve to come out on the right end of it. The open play XG is 2.0 to Arsenal to 0.9 to Man City. So Arsenal deserve to win this game. Even with the penalty, it's 2.0 to 1.7. So Arsenal are the better team, who create the better chances. But yeah, I think kind of long term. But in this moment, I felt really annoyed because we'd given up a 2-goal lead. I felt like we had an opportunity to maybe hold it back a bit, but the frustration didn't last long, because basically from kickoff, again, we get that Mariona reward. As much as I don't think Kim Little or Lia Walti would be giving away the ball in their own penalty area, they're probably not galloping forward either and playing those kind of through balls. And Frida puts the ball in the net, and it's 3-2 straight away.
Yeah, this game was chaos. I'm going to call it game of the season. It gave the same vibes as when Liverpool played Chelsea at the very end of last season, where it was just chaos. You had no idea who was going to win. It felt like either side could capitalize. But yeah, honestly, Mariona, we've seen her talent. We know how good she is at splitting lines. It's a quality through ball. But I want to give this a lot to Frida, because I know it seems a simple finish, but it's not. She's out-muscled Alexandri. She's put a great finish into the bottom left corner. I just think we're seeing Frida right now play with so much maturity. And I look at her and I look at a player that we saw 2 seasons ago, glimpses of this young player really, really performing at a high standard. And obviously last season she struggled to get into the lineup. Victoria Pelova was on smoke every week, so it was hard. And she didn't really get that continuous starting time. So I just think, for me, watching a player like Frida right now perform the way she is, it's really impressive, and I'm really, really delighted to see it, because that finish, to be able to do that, you're off balance, put it bottom corner, and especially in order to respond. And I think that was the biggest thing with this, is we've seen Arsenal sides in the last couple of seasons really drop their heads, and I think had that goal, that equaliser from Miedema gone in, maybe we're seeing a different game state with a team with a different mentality. And I think that's what Renee's brought to this team. It's an ability to just bounce back straight away. And I think it was Kit Shepherd that asked the question from the Times to Renee, and that's the biggest thing we've seen, is this kind of ability to bounce back. And that goal from Frida really, really summed that up. It was Arsenal from kickoff, reset, let's go, let's take it to the other end. And yeah, no, I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, I think even last season, I think this also shows how Frida's worked on her finishing and really varied it, because I think even last season, probably the 3-wood comes out and she smashes it as hard as she can. But she's got a lot of goals this season, like rolling the ball into the net, passing it into the net. And yeah, I think it really kind of emphasises that work. And all of a sudden it's 3-2, but then very quickly it's 3-3. Now City get in behind, and Figino does get in behind Steph Catley here, and it is a cynical foul. It's a shirt tug. I was right behind it, but I was also close enough, and I didn't have as good a position as the assistant referee, but I could see it was miles outside the area. I think, given the position of the assistant referee, I think this penalty is basically unacceptable blunder. I do think that assistant should probably be sat down next weekend for making an error that big. And I don't know how you felt watching on TV, because I had such a good view of it and I could see so clearly it was outside the area. I was, I struggled to retain press box decorum, put it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I sat, and obviously when you're watching it on TV, it's just your generic bird's eye view, which is not always the best. However, clear as day, I thought that is definitely a foul. It's probably a good foul to give away because Figino was on. And then I've seen the referee point to the penalty spot, and I'm like, what's happening there? And like you said, Tim, referees make mistakes, and I understand it. It was a good meter outside the press box. Not my fault. 18-yard box. So I don't really know how the referees called it in the first place, but like you said, Tim, it's the assistant referee. You need to chime in there. You see that is nowhere near it. You're the closest person on the ground other than Steph Catley to Figino. How have you not seen that that's outside the box? I think that it just is it's a big testament to the standard of refereeing. And I think the referees in the WSL, they need more support. They're not there. We can talk about, the quality of them, but I don't think that they're given the support to, be able to learn or train. It just feels like it's something we've seen before. You saw the Merseyside derby earlier in the season. Something very similar to this happened. Everton were awarded a penalty that was not in the box, although that one was probably at least half a meter closer than this one. So yeah, it was frustrating. It was one of those decisions as well where it's like, that is so clear as day. And I understand there's human errors, but that is a very, very big howler of a human error. And had that game ended 3-3, or had City been able to capitalise on that goal scoring momentum, it would have been one that I don't think Arsenal fans would have been happy about, and rightfully so.
Yeah, shades of a couple of seasons ago when the ball hits the referee and it diverts the ball away from Beth Mead to Lauren Hemp, and City score and the referee doesn't stop the game, which was pretty astounding as well. But, I mean, it does speak to the level of which the fact that Steph makes that foul in the first place and the position City are in, it's still very basketball. There's still, again, like Lia Walti is the left central midfielder. I have a hard time believing that situation would have unfolded had she been on the pitch, but she comes on the pitch on 69 minutes. At this point, Man City have had 13 shots. They have one more in the 21 minutes plus 5 minutes injury time. So 26 minutes, they manage one more shot with Lia Walti coming off the bench. And really, that was the substitution that changed it. City, obviously, they just go 3-3 and then they bring Bunny Shaw on. And I know how I felt when that happened. I felt, well, now we've got to score 2 because she's probably going to score 1. They bring on Carolyn as well, who actually does make a difference. Carolyn completed 3 dribbles in the time she was on the pitch. So you can see why City have bought her, particularly with Chloe Kelly leaving. But it's Lia Walti comes on, and for me, it's not just the defensive off-ball work; it's the looking after the ball. Because I'm watching this, and I can see City's defence is nowhere, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, all it ever took was one ball over the top, and they were bang in trouble. But the problem was we couldn't keep the ball and keep them under pressure. That all changes when Lia Walti comes on. So it's not just the defensive element of it, it's actually the attacking element. And even with Bunny Shaw, City kind of die as an attacking force. But actually, we've got a good question about this, and I'm kind of going to skip ahead to it because I think it's a really good one. Let me just find it. Yeah, it's from I'm Not Cynthia. And this is how I'll frame the question to you, Jamie. Did City change their attack because of Wally or because of Bunny? The build-up was different when Viv came off. They became a lot more direct. And so I think the question there is basically, is it a case of Bunny? Gareth Taylor complained about this afterwards. He said we went too long, too often when Bunny came on, as opposed to when you got Miedema and you basically got someone drifting around. But what do you think the kicker was there? Wally's presence, City going a bit long to Bunny Shaw, or a little bit of both?
I think that's a great question, because I think there is so much to unpack around this substitution on both sides, because obviously Lia Walti comes on, like you said, Tim, it's just bringing calmness and composure to the Arsenal midfield where we didn't see it across the 90 minutes. And when a game is like playing out like ping pong in front of you and you can deploy a midfielder as classy as Lia Walti on the ball, it is a game changer. And I think Renee said to you, Tim, after the game that we speak about game changers as strikers, but you don't really speak about them as midfielders. But this was the substitution that changed the game state. And I think I want to take it completely back and bring it back to that question and take it back to the two managers, because I do think that these substitutions have been made from completely different points. And I've spoken a lot about Gareth Taylor and what I think about, his managerial style. And I think he's looked to his bench and he's seen two absolute stars of the women's game in Bunny Shaw and Carolyn and said, these players I will put on the pitch and they will make an instant impact because of their individual quality. And I think that's what happened. And City and the players themselves have grown complacent in the managerial style to be able to say, okay, let's hoof it long to Bunny Shaw because she's going to solve all our problems. And we've seen that for a couple seasons now, and we've seen them really, really struggle when she's not there. And I think that the tactical shift that occurred when Bunny Shaw came on wasn't a result of Gareth Taylor on the touchline. And this might be a harsh assessment, but I do really think there is a complacency that's growing around Man City right now, where these players from the top down are looking at that team and saying, we have game changers, we need to get them the ball. I don't think that the team and the tactics shifted to say, let's give the ball to Bunny. I just think that's how they play when she's up front. And Viv gives them that added element where she holds up the ball and really exploits Arsenal because she knows how to keep possession, and then Mary Fowler drops in and they work well like that, and you've got a player like Fagino. But I think as soon as you bring Viv off and you bring Bunny on, there's a complacency there, and that's where City fell apart, because it just felt like Renee one-upped them, and her bench didn't have the talent. And we saw it last week against Chelsea. It felt like Sonia, yes, she had Lauren James, Gura Rat, and these exceptional players, but she played them at the right times and she put them on at the right times. Gareth Taylor just relied on these players to change the game, whereas Renee had probably one player that could really, really effectively change the game, and she knew that she needed to make that change, and it made the change. So I think as much as we can say Lia Walti was exceptional, and I thought she was exceptional, like she is a footballer that I will talk and wax lyrical on for hours, but I did think that this game was changed on the touchline, and I do have to praise Renee for that, because she utilised the one player that was going to change the game, whereas I think Gareth Taylor was looking for that Hail Mary finish.
Yeah, I think that the essence of the games being changed from the bench is, Lia Walti comes on, Bunny Shaw comes on, but it's a straight swap, Bunny Shaw for Viv Miedema. I think if Gareth Taylor can have his time back, he maybe takes Jess Park off or Jill Roord and puts Miedema in the 10 and keeps her there behind Bunny Shaw to keep that link, because they lose that link. Whereas, and again, there's... I'll put it to you in the second half. There's a really good question from PDX Gunner on this, but it's not just that Walti comes on, it's Mariona stays on and stays in the pivot, and that's fine. Like Mariona plus one of Lia or Kim, that's fine with me. Without both of them, maybe it's a bit helter-skelter, but she keeps Mariona in the pivot. I was wondering whether maybe Frida would come off, they'd move Mariona up to the 10, they don't. So Renee brings off Kyra Cooney-Cross. She backs Lia Walti to handle the midfield on her own and keep that kind of single pivot, and that really pays off. So it's actually quite an attacking change in a sense. It's not you see the names Carolyn and Bunny Shaw, and that seems like a more attacking change, but they're both like for like. Lia Walti comes on, and we keep Mariona where she is. And, some stuff happens, which is basically, first of all, City can't really get the ball because Arsenal look after it better. Lia Walti's much better at looking after some of those threats off the ball, but also Arsenal are able to build some pressure. And I did get a bit frustrated with Leslie Russo on my side in the second half because she kept getting fouled. Constantly, Kasparov was pulling her shirt and she wasn't going down. And that was one of the things, first of all, she should have because she was getting fouled. But secondly, just to break up the game a little bit, just get those fouls, and it wasn't happening. And Wally's great. I don't think she really did that in this game, but she's great at that, buying the foul and all of those things that just can bring the temperature down. But for the tactics of it all, Arsenal look better for the changes than City, and I felt like the goal was coming. And, we talk about how weak are City in their left defensive channel. This time it's Arsenal that do that big switch to the right, which City have been doing so well. Beth Mead into Stina, and first time finish Stina, the City Slayer. When she has no time to think, she's a very, very good finisher. And 4-3. And at that point, I felt older, but I felt better.
I do feel like my blood pressure was through the roof and I'd aged about 10 years. But no, I agree. I did feel better as soon as that goal went in. I think as well, it comes from a good ball in from Beth Mead as well. She broke open the City defence. And I do think Lia Walti coming onto the pitch really helped Beth Mead as well. Because like you said, Tim, it felt like City were always vulnerable at the back for that kind of ball over to the top or into the channels. But it felt like Arsenal weren't really given the opportunity to do it. And I think Beth Mead was able to get on the ball a lot more when Walti came on. And obviously that ended up being very positive. She puts a good ball in. City probably should have cut it out at some stage, and then Stina finishes. Stina's performance, I think, left a lot to be desired. And I know she's always getting these last-minute winners against City, but I think had she not scored in that game, I'd have had a few choice words to say about her performance. It's hard because I think, you speak about the tactical impact of playing Stina against a team like City where they are weak in the channels, but I think it's just hard to watch Alessia Russo play on the wing when she's in such good form. Again, to no fault of Renee, I'm not saying this is the manager's fault, because having Caitlin Ford out, having Kim Little out, you have to do that because Mariona has to come into the 10 and you don't have anyone else to play out wide. But I don't like Alessia Russo in the wing. I don't like watching her play there. I think you're wasting such an exceptional talent up front. And Stina is so frustrating. She's either offside or she's missing sitters. It's like she overthinks it. And you're right, Tim. She's so good when she has no time to think. But if you give that girl 3 seconds on the ball, it's hard to watch. So I'm glad she got the winner, because I was not very, very pleased with the performance on a whole and just having her so isolated.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Stina. Like, she scores against City. Her goal scoring record in the Champions League is great. Against those bigger teams that play those higher lines, she eats. But yeah, there were lots of times when the ball was dropped over the top, and and she had maybe a bit of a dribble, and when there's a pass on, she doesn't quite make it. But Beth Mead, I thought Beth had a really good game, actually. Lovely low cross, great low finish. And then Arsenal really close it out, actually, for the last kind of 10 minutes. City don't really threaten. I was having conniptions when they had that corner in the 94th minute and Arsenal bring Amanda Illerstedt on. And thankfully, Mary Fowler just puts it onto the top of the net, because I was really thinking, oh, God, like I can really feel this unfolding. But we got it done. I think we've spoken about the fact, really, that this felt like a bit of a one-off game, because the Arsenal team is just not going to look. I don't even think it will look like this on Thursday night. But let's maybe pick out. Let's each pick out a player other than Mariona, who I think we've talked about a lot, and really she's the match winner on the day. And I think she embodies what happened in this game, really, because in one respect, in deeper positions it got a bit hairy, but she wins Arsenal the game. There's no doubt about that with what she does going forward. But was there another player perhaps that we haven't discussed so much that you want to shine a light on, for better or for worse?
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of choosing the same player every week, but I'm going to say Lia Williamson again. I think she kind of flew under the radar a little bit this week. I do think there was some defensive errors, but that was caused, when you have Katie McCabe back in that team. And I think this game really, really proved to a lot of fans that have maybe been a bit critical of Katie McCabe how important she is to this Arsenal team, because it really does dismantle a lot of things. It dismantles us defensively and going forward. So I think playing Steph Catley at left back was very shaky, but I do think Lia had a really good game. When Bunny Shaw came on, she absolutely body checked her every time, and this is a player that's probably the best striker in the world. So I think Lia right now, she's playing like a player that doesn't have any worries in the world, and she's not worried about her knee, she's not worried about her hamstring issues. So I think that, Lia Williamson yesterday did really well to settle it, and you need a leader, and I think that's what we saw when she was in and out of the squad, and Kim Little was also injured. Arsenal lacked a leader, and she's someone that kind of led from the back yesterday, and I'm impressed with how well she's been performing lately. And I just think it's nice to see Lia Williamson play with a carefree demeanor and someone that's backing herself in the contest, because I did think she left Joey Stadium with her keys and Bunny Shaw in her pocket. So I was very pleased yesterday.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the other centre-back, actually, Lotte Wubben-Moy. I mean, actually, I kind of had half a mind to mention Daphne van Domselaar as well, who makes a really good save from Hasegawa in the first half. And I think Arsenal just, with Daphne over Manu, when those shots go towards the top corner, a lot of it's footwork. She's got really good footwork to spring off Daphne van Domselaar, but she's also just taller. She's got longer arms. So when those balls go towards the top corner, she's across them. And I'm so impressed at how quickly she has removed the debate about the goalkeeper position. But I'm going to say Lotte. I think that's the other element as well about the substitution for City when Bunny Shaw comes on. I think Lotte's so much more suited to that kind of battle, and we saw it last season when she played Rachel Daly. She loved that. She loved playing against Bunny. I think she really loves those like physical dueling type battles. I think she's really well suited to them. And it feels a bit weird that we're talking about the two centre-backs and the goalkeeper after conceding 3 goals, but honestly, I don't put any of the goals on any of them, really, and they were getting little to no protection whatsoever. And actually, City don't create an awful lot in the game. 0.9 XG. They've done well, open play XG. They've done well to get 2 goals out of that. They had 14 shots, but a lot of them from outside the area. And yeah, we've got some questions about the centre-back situation or the defensive situation in the second half, but I think this is great for Arsenal because Lotte's come in, she's performed well. she's saying, I'm not being forgotten about here. I'm here. I want that spot. I'm going to compete for it. And that's a wonderful position for a manager and a team to be in, that like players are really fighting for those spots. And I think Lotta's given something for Slegers to think about. But there's some questions about that in the second half that I'll maybe put to you. But for 49 minutes on the first half. I think that's one of the longest we've gone for a first half on the podcast, but you can see why. It was that kind of game. There was a lot to get through, but we'll take a beat and a breath and a break there, and we will be back in part 2 with your questions submitted on Blue Sky. Be right back after this. Okay, welcome to part 2 of the Arsenal Women Arsecast. Looking back on Sunday's helter-skelter 4-3 victory away at Manchester City. We're going to take your questions in the second half as ever. And Jamie, the first one, we've got loads about the midfield. Actually, I know we talked about this, but the fact we've got so many questions about this, I think, really shows it's kind of a big theme of the game. So a couple here, one from A at Ariella W. It bothers me how huge our reliance is on either Wally or Kim being fit to look like ourselves. KCC was ostensibly bought as a 6, but I haven't seen enough to convince me that's her best path forward. Tim said he thinks KCC is the Walti replacement with Vic as the Kim Little one. Do you still think that's true? Or do you think we need to bring someone else in? Like, can a future of like Palova and Cooney Cross, like, is that enough? Or does there need to be, another more defensive presence in there? And this one at Respect Horror, I hope that's like the film genre and not just a general statement. How does the potential look for our future midfield of KCC and Palova? Will they work nicely together, or does it miss a more defensive player like Wally? And also all of these questions happening in the context of Keira Walsh going to Chelsea as well. So what do you make? We've talked about this game as a bit of a short term. The team's not going to look like this, but looking at what it might look like in a season or two, do you still think that Arsenal need just that little measure of conservatism in there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Tim, because had you asked me maybe a couple of weeks ago when there was the prospect of maybe Arsenal signing Keira Walsh, I was one of the people welcoming that signing, because I do think that Arsenal need like you said, like a more conservative defensive midfielder that really just acts as an anchor in the midfield. I think that Lia Walti, I do think we group her with Kim Little a bit too often, because I don't know if they're the exact, like, they're not in the same stage of their career. I think Kim Little is closer to the end, albeit that is very sad, than Lia Walti is. So I'm very, very happy with, having a fit Lia Walti in that team, and acting is still in a double pivot, but more of a single pivot with someone like Keira, who I don't believe is a natural 6 as well. I agree with the person that asked that question. I don't think she has the defensive discipline that really can work as being an anchor. I think she's got the attacking abilities of kind of splitting lines from the CDM role, but I worry for her acting as a sole pivot. So I do think her with Lia Walti, I know we saw it against that Leicester City game, and that wasn't the greatest performance, but I think there's room for that. They need more time to play together. So I'm less worried in that department. However, I do think as Lia Walti, if we're looking into the future, as she enters the final stages of her career, I do think that Arsenal need more of a conservative anchor CDM. I think Palova is a little bit too attacking to work in a double pivot. I really like when she does, but again, it needs to be next to someone like Kim or Lia. Can't be next to Keira. Mariona and Keira, we know how that ends. It's very, very exciting to watch, but it can have its downfalls as well. So I think if I was in the recruitment building right now, I would say we need to look at a CDM that's really just a conservative, sit back, hold the anchor of the pivot, because I don't think Keira is that player, and I think she works a lot better when she has the ability to float forward. I think Vic Palova has the ability to work better when she floats forward, and Frida Monum and Mariona are very attacking players, and I like them playing that role. So yeah, cut a long story short, I do think there needs to be a little bit of foresight on a CDM in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a case of, what does Renee want? Does she want 2 6s and a 10, or a 6 and 2 8s? Because there's a world where, maybe Cooney Cross, Palova and Walti all play together, and you don't have a 10 per se, but you have a lone pivot, which, we might see. Have you got a question for me?
I sure do. We just touched on this before the break about, centre-back partnerships and Lotte Wubben-Moy giving some headaches. But this is a question from Bunny, not sure. Just to make that clear, because Bunny Shaw might not want to see Lotte Wubben-Moy. I get it. What do you think about Lotte and Lia partnership? I know it's only been one game, but do you think there's a chance that it can work in the future? The conceded goals weren't necessarily their fault. It's just hard to justify putting Lotte or Steph on the bench when they play well. Lotte's defensive strength and physicality makes it easier for her to go up against centre forwards like Bunny, but I understand Renee's desire for balance, hence Steph. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think this is really similar to the midfield question as well, in that a lot of the truth will probably be that there'll be some rotation within that. So, for example, in games against the lower blocks, probably Steph Catley and Lia Williamson, and then you probably only need one number 6. You need to focus on the ball playing. But I said, I think in the build up to this game, I didn't think it was. In fact, I felt it might be quite beneficial to have not so much to have Katie missing, but to have Lotte at centre back, because this is a game where you're going to have to defend more, and you probably need a more natural kind of centre back type thing. So the real truth is, assuming everyone stays, we'll see all of this. There'll be games where we'll want 2 6s, where we'll want at least a Kim plus Lia equivalent, for example. Had they both been fit, I'm sure that's who would have started away at Chelsea. It would have been Kim and Lia. And then, for Leicester at home, you probably only need a number 6. You can put Steph at centre back so she can clear up the left back. But against the bigger teams, maybe you want Lotte alongside Lia, because those teams are going to carry threats and they're going to get more balls into the box. So honestly, I think both are great. And I don't think we as fans have to worry too much about that kind of horses for courses approach. And ultimately, that is also how you get the best out of big squads, by not having really firm we only ever play with these two. We're seeing Arsenal and Renee, I think, move away a little bit from it always being Wally and Kim. It's difficult to totally decipher because they both had injury issues. But I think Renee's probably thinking we probably only need one of those players a lot of the games that we're playing. And to your point, Kim is closer to the end of her career. She's having her minutes managed. I think Lia Walti's got another 2-3 years in her peak. I don't think that's an immediate problem. So I'm for all of it. I'm for all of those things whenever they're needed. That's what Emma Hayes did with Chelsea. It wasn't the same partnerships all the time. You do want a bit of stability in defence, but I think the truth is you need all your players in the season, and then it's just a case of whether they're happy with that. And you'll probably get some churn over the top of that, and that's fine as well. So yeah, I don't think Arsenal need to make a firm decision out of that personally. Let me ask you another one then, which okay. I went on about this at the end of part 1, so I'll give you a chance on it. But I think it's a really good question from @PDX Gunner. Lia subbing on for KCC and playing as a sole pivot against City, pressing for an equaliser. Was this Renee's gutsiest tactical adjustment since she started the manager role? And do you think we'll see more of the single pivot now against low block teams?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, Tim. When I saw Lia Walti coming on, I thought, yeah, great, this is great. I'm excited for that. I was surprised to see Keira coming off, not purely based on Keira's performance, but I did think in my heart in that moment, I was just it's if you can put Russo in the 9, maybe bring Stina off, then you push Frida further up. That's what I thought was going to happen. I didn't think that she was going to do a straight swap pivot for pivot. So I agree with PDX Gunner. I think it was a very gutsy decision, because you're playing against a team with a lot of attacking quality, a lot of threat through the middle. In the central areas, they really like to, you can get the ball at Bunny Shaw's feet and she can work her magic. So I think that this was a gutsy tactical move, and I think it really paid off. And I think that's what we're seeing with Renee, is we're seeing some she brings a lot of certainty to her transitions when she makes substitutions. I feel like she really, really backs herself. Whereas with Jonas, it never really seemed like he was sure on his starting 11. It didn't seem like he was sure of his decisions. And when they didn't transpire positively, he kind of went back on them a little bit. Although he was very, very certain of, I make my subs at the 65th minute every single game. It didn't feel like it had as much, tactical backing as what Renee does. And all kudos to her. Obviously, like I said earlier, I thought that the move came at the right time. It was executed really well. In terms of the single pivot, again, I think I agree with what you just touched on, Tim. It depends on the game state. I think we will see maybe a little bit more of Lia Walti playing in a single pivot against teams where you don't really need to negate their midfield threat, and that will just happen as it comes. Honestly, there's not a lot more to say. I thought it was a great move. I thought it was gutsy, and I thought Renee knew exactly what she was doing, and I think that's what we're seeing. She's banking on her decisions. She's banking on her substitute. She's making them at the right time. So, yeah, I was very impressed with that Lia Walti change yesterday, and from the manager and the player alike, I thought it was a great change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen her do it a few times from the bench. And other than the Chelsea game when effectively she couldn't because she didn't have the resources. So I think the message is there. Give this manager the resources because I think she's shown she can really use them. And I really like something she said actually in the post-match just to change tack a little bit. But she talked about reviewing that Chelsea game and she's beginning to talk a lot about the Arsenal way now. And she said in her press conference after she was confirmed as manager, she talked about, she'd shown all the players like these presentations, which she hadn't done as interim, but she said, I did a little presentation to them about my values. And she talked about like empowerment being a big one for her. She talked about like respect to staff and equipment and all of that. But she's talking about the Arsenal way, which I imagine is a PowerPoint that she whipped out in the interview with Claire Wheatley and Jason Ato. But she's got this thing about like with the players, like what's the Arsenal way? And she said, after the Chelsea game, I analysed that. I looked at that. I was like, were we playing the Arsenal way? And actually, I kind of think that comes out maybe in this substitution where I was incredibly anxious and nervous, and I wanted Lia Walti on, I wanted Lia Cadena on, I wanted Amanda Illerstedt on, I wanted Niswanger on, I wanted 11 defenders, I wanted to, because I was nervous and anxious, and that makes you emotional, and that makes you, but like, whereas she was like, okay, no, I need Lia Walti on, but City are vulnerable, so I'm keeping the attacking threats on. I'm leaving Frida, I'm leaving Stina, I'm leaving Beth, I'm leaving Russo, I'm leaving Mariona. Like, I will bring Lia Walti on to bring an element of control, but I'm not taking out an attacker to do that. And I think that's a really good question because I think it really kind of sets the tone about why, if this game was won from the touchline, we've touched on it a lot, like Renee won it from the touchline with her subs, which I think had a little bit more thought behind them than Gareth Taylor's. I think she outcoached him in this game. I've gone on a bit on that one, so I'm going to give you another question, which is, I think we already talked about Stina. Okay. So obviously Arsenal have City again on Thursday in the League Cup semi-final. And Arsenal aren't going to get loads of players back, I don't think. I think Renee said Caitlin had been on the pitch today, so she's got a chance. Kim Little won't be able to play. And again, we don't know like how many minutes Lia Walti can do yet, whether she's coming back or whether they really are just managing it and it's just no more than 20 minutes. But this one's from Rose at Rose CH91. Playing any team back to back is difficult, let alone City. How do you see us approaching that game, and how do you see us lining up? A lot depending on Wally's fitness, I think. So not a big time for turnover, not a lot of other options. Some options, Katie McCabe coming back, Jenna Niswanger, I'm sure she's available to play some minutes. Do you see us going the same on Thursday, or do you see something else?
Yeah, I think the key to the last puzzle piece is Katie McCabe returning. I think she'll change a lot. I don't think Steph will play. I see Lotta and Leah maybe going again, considering there's a couple. So I think that it'll be a straight swap for Catley for McCabe, and that will be very beneficial. A lot of it is dependent on Lia Walti's fitness. We obviously don't know where she's at. It would be nice if she could start the game, because I think that allows, Frida and Keira to maybe play in the midfield, and then you do push Mariona wide if that's something Renee would want to do. You obviously then have to, you get rid of that attacking threat in the central areas, and that's obviously a real area where City are vulnerable. However, I don't know if she'll start Stina again. I don't really know how that will work, because I do think that was a failed experiment yesterday, just with Stina and Russo playing. I think they play really well together. And maybe if you don't start Wally, maybe Russo drops into the 10, because I do think that is a better opportunity for her, because she holds the ball up, and it really, really helps Stina. Like we've spoken about it before, Tim, Stina doesn't have a hold-up play. She needs someone kind of there to do it for her. So I think they work well together, but I don't want to see Russo on the wing anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Jenna gets some minutes as well. I'm excited by this nice Wonga signing. I feel like we need to speak about it a bit more, because she is obviously a left back and she's a very versatile player, but I think we throw around the word versatility very easily. She only became a left back in 2023 when she signed for Gotham. So she was an 8 and a 10 before then. So I think there's a recent versatility to a player like that you never know. She's not going to come on in the 8 against City on Thursday, but just for future planning, I think that brings a lot to the squad. But in terms of defence, I think it's a straight swab for McCabe and Catley, and I don't really know what Renee will do. I think it's really just dependent on whether Lia Walti's fit and ready to go.
Yeah. I think with Niswanger, I think the thing about her is not so much she'll play in midfield, but I think fullbacks that can go into midfield is really important to Renee. And actually, we couldn't do that in this game, and I think it kind of told. I think that Katie might play on the wing, and then you don't have to play Russo there. I think it could be Russo behind Blackstenius, maybe as well, and Frida coming out, but particularly because of the problems Figino caused on the right-hand side, I think there'd be a benefit maybe to having Steph and Katie on that side, and also Katie's good at coming into midfield, so if we can't play Lia Walti, like there's a bit of an option there. I think Katie's the kicker here, really. It's just a case of whether she comes in at left back, whether she comes in the left wing, what that means for Steph Catley, but I can see a Catley McCabe left side. And then maybe Caitlin can do the last 20 minutes. And by the way, I think that's a player we missed as well, because we're talking about like Arsenal maybe lacking a bit of structure, and Caitlin is a structure player. I think maybe not so much defensively, but you can be pretty certain of where she's going to be at any one time. So I do think we missed her a little bit as well when we're talking about a slightly loose performance. But yeah, I think I'm set on that. I think Katie McCabe will play on the wing, Steph Catley left back, Lotta will keep her place. Then it will just be a case of whether Lia Walti can start. I've got a feeling she won't. I think if she'd have done the whole half, maybe if she'd been close to being able to start a game. And I think maybe Renee would prefer to bring her on rather than start her and have to take her off. But maybe if we play Katie on the wing, we've just got another player who can plug that gap a little bit and maybe stop Figino causing havoc. So that would be my bet. Do you have no, I did a lot on that question. So I've got another question for you, which is from @VSRY, talking about Figino. I think Figino had a great game. What do you think Arsenal could have done more to stop her? And is it concerning if other teams think this is an area to exploit us defensively?
Yeah, again, I don't know if there's a lot to analyse on this, because I just thought Steph Catley got caught out for speed. I think in the opening fixture at the Emirates, I don't think Figino was particularly impressive. I think that in this game, it was just Steph got caught for speed. I think we've seen that trickle into her game recently. We saw it, playing for the Matildas at the Olympics and the back end of last season. I think that shift to centre back has just added years to Steph's career. And I just think she can play fullback, and I'm not saying she can't play fullback. And like you said, Tim, it's a matter of who she's got there supporting her. Because I think if Katie McCabe is on the wing, she does defensively support Steph, and they play a lot better. Whereas when Caitlin's maybe on the left wing and Russo, it's not that the defensive integrity is not as strong on that left side. So for me, I just think it's a matter of adding Katie McCabe to your team, whether that be in a forward function or a defensive function. I think it's just about strengthening that right side. I thought Virginia was really good. She's not a player I've been completely impressed with watching Man City all season. I think she just had a really good game. I don't think she's a player that is a threat every single time you play City. So I'm not too worried. I think Katie McCabe coming into that side in however shape or form it is will definitely improve the squad. And look, I think there's always been a little bit of is there an area to exploit there for Arsenal? I don't really know if there is. I think it's an Arsenal team that on Sunday against City, it was thin on the ground. There was a lot of players playing in positions they're not particularly paying rent in usually. So I'm not too concerned about Fagino as a threat. I'm more actually concerned about Viviana Miedema and her hold-up play in the central areas if Walti isn't playing. So that's where my concerns lie.
Yeah. I think City always play like that as well. They overload on the left and they look to switch to the right. I don't think that was a tactic reserved for Arsenal, and they did kind of turn that tap off a little bit in the second half. So there's stuff to learn there. Do you have a question for me?
I do. This one's stepping away from the City game for a minute, but it's from Will AFC1, and it's about Chloe Kelly. Will said, with Renee suggesting Chloe Kelly was already a longer-term target rather than purely a market opportunity and her contract being up in the summer, what do you think is the likelihood of that move being permanent? I think it's important to note, Tim, that when it was Tom Ma at the halfway line that asked the question with Renee about Chloe Kelly being in the plans, she said Chloe has been a part of our future planning. I don't think she meant future planning in the summer. I think she meant Kelly has always been on Arsenal's radar for this window. So I think fans maybe did pick that up in the wrong way. But all that considered, Tim, do you think there's a potential for Kelly? We haven't seen her in Arsenal shirt yet, but is this move made with future planning, do you think?
Yeah, I think this will be really interesting. And it does. I mean, on one hand, it begs the question, like, she's been available the whole window. So why did we wait till a few hours before the end? But sometimes deals do happen like that. Sometimes I think Chloe, basically, I think it kind of looked like City just weren't going to let her go because they didn't want her to go to a competitor. And then she releases the statement. It forces the hand. And then it is an opportunity for Arsenal because Arsenal come to City and say, we know you don't want her to come to us, really, but we know you really don't want her to go to United, and we're the lesser of two evils. And sometimes deals happen like that. Sometimes deals do have to happen late because maybe if we put in a bid or whatever on January the 10th, they just go, no, go away. And then the talks have broken down. And it's very hard to go back when that happens. So maybe there was a sense which this had to happen late. A bit like the Kyra Cooney-Cross deal, that had to happen late because of the competition. Arsenal had to stay very quiet and then go in late to get it done and do the old rug pull, which incidentally is basically what Chelsea have done with Keira Walsh. Like, that's why Keira Walsh signed a little bit after the deadline, actually. I think they had to get FIFA clearance for that. Like, I think if they go in on January the 15th, again, Barca say go away, and the talks are broken down then. So they do have to happen late. I think it would depend on a couple of things. First of all, obviously how Chloe herself plays, and I think it also depends on what else happens in the wide areas. I do think Arsenal probably need more than one wide player in the summer because I think Lena Hurtig's probably going to go. And then it's just because she's 27, right? So she's kind of, peak years type thing. And I do think Arsenal want to bring that age bracket of the squad down. But if, like, for example, Beth leaves, which I'm not saying she will, I've got no idea, but like if something eventuates, like if one of the other wide players goes as well, then Arsenal need two. And if Chloe Kelly plays really well, then why on earth wouldn't you keep her? Mm-hmm. But it also might depend. She might be doing a deal with someone now because she can. If she wants to, she can go and negotiate with someone like right now and say, okay, you can have me like next season. So, but I'm sure both parties will just see how things go a little bit. But look, if she comes in and she performs, I think it's a no lose for Arsenal because they need the warm body as much as anything. And if she proves to be more than that, which I think with her talent she should, why on earth not? Like it's one of those, if she doesn't perform, you shake hands, say thank you very much, off you go. If she does, try and keep her. Why not? Like I suspect it's not clear at the moment for either party. I might be wrong about that. And both parties will probably just give it a month or two, see where they are and go from there, which I think is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I do think the market for younger wide players does open up a little bit in the summer. I think there are going to be some players on the market where there might be some opportunities. I'll ask you one now, transfer window related, and this one's from Brock Strongo, who asks, do you think the pursuit of Keira Walsh hampered our summer and January transfer windows? From reporting, it feels like we had quite a few eggs in that particular basket, possibly to the detriment of other parts of the squad. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think we all saw Arsenal's bid in the summer for Keira Walsh, and I do think that bid was... obviously Arsenal had interest in Keira Walsh for seasons before that as well, so it wasn't just a last-ditch effort. Obviously, that big world record-breaking bid did come a bit too late in the window, where Barcelona were never going to sell because they didn't have enough time before that the window had shut to kind of fill that gap with Keira Walsh, so it felt like Arsenal really, really went for it and committed to the move a bit too late. I think, look, I obviously, you don't know what's happening behind the curtain, but I do think there was a bit of complacency in the January transfer window. This is just from a fan perspective. Like, this is from just me looking in as a fan, where it's like, okay, you know that this player wants to return home to England. She's told the club that she's leaving in the summer upon the expiration of her contract. You know that there's been previous talks held where she's interested, and Arsenal, I feel like there is the potential for that move there. And it felt like they were a bit complacent. And Chelsea have entered, and we've seen Chelsea be so aggressive in the market. We saw it with Naomi Girma, and they're saying, look, we know we need a player like this, and we're going to go and we're going to buy her on deadline day because we can. And I don't know if the interest cooled. Tim, you'll be able to provide more insight on that. I don't know if Arsenal maybe lost interest in Keira Walsh, or if it was from a complacency where we think we can get her on in the summer for a free. But it felt like that was a missed opportunity for Arsenal, because I do believe there's maybe a bit of a need for a CDM, a world-class CDM, and an anchor in the midfield. So from a fan perspective, it felt like, damn, like that's a missed opportunity to really, really show your intent in the window. And I think that has knock-on effects, because if you're looking at world-class players and you're saying, yeah, we want you, but we kind of want you, then what does that send the message? That's signaling to other world-class players that Arsenal are going to want to sign. They're going to want your signature, but they're not really prepared to fight for you in the market. And then there's clubs like Chelsea who are on a brilliant run in the league. They're 5 straight league titles in the WSL, and they're in the Champions League, and that's a club with real intent. And when they're making world-class signings like Walsh and Girma, that sends signaling to fans and players that this club are really taking everything seriously. So I think in terms of, blundering, so to speak, that Walsh signing for Arsenal, it's a bigger picture thing right now, and I think it has a lot to say about the women's game and where we are with the women's game, and why Chelsea are kind of front running, because they're so aggressive in the market. And it's not just Arsenal, there are other clubs in the league that are struggling to really pick up the momentum with that as well. So I don't know about hampering everything in other areas. Tim, you'll probably be able to give more to that than I will, because I'm not sure if they've put too many eggs in one basket and they've forgotten to recruit in other positions. Because I think Kelly and Niswanger, they're 2 good signings. January's a hard time to make world-class signings. I think Chelsea have set the bar very high, and other clubs maybe it's hard to bring in world-class talent in January. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents at least.
Yeah, I don't think it's hampered Arsenal's long-term planning too much, because I don't think they were ever really planning to go in January. I think it was going to be a summer thing. They threw the bag at it because essentially they went hard for it summer 2023. Barcelona weren't interested. And I think at that point, they were probably thinking, well, we'll just wait for the contract to end. And then summer 2024, they get a bit of encouragement, basically. So I'm not sure if they were 100,000% planning on it, but they just get a bit of encouragement that maybe it could be possible. But then Barca don't get Lia Alexandri, and that complicates things, and it becomes a bit messy. Jonas knows his job's hanging by a thread, really, so he wants to throw the bag at a player like that. I don't think they were ever going to go in January. I'm still piecing together the proper Arsenal perspective on this, but I believe they weren't entirely blindsided by it. They did know Chelsea were going to come in. I don't know after that. It could be that they looked at the numbers of the salary or something like that, maybe the age profile of the player. Maybe Renee was not as hot on it as Jonas. I don't know. It's me speculating. So, but in terms of the summer, like, they've got a whole 5 months to be honest. Like, I don't think it should, hamper things too much. I think what more hampered the window was so much resource was spent on the manager for the first half of it, when that should have been done on January the 1st. And I think it probably does speak to the fact there's just not enough staff at the moment to have handled both things. And so, we made the January window shorter for ourselves because it just took so much time to kind of cross the I's and dot the I's and cross the T's on Renee. And I think that for me is more the wrinkle of it, to be honest. So I don't think it'll impact the summer too much. I don't think they were planning to do it in January anyway. They didn't really, they put that money down on deadline day last year. So, like, I don't think it should really. I think they've got ample time to, like, recover from that, put it that way. Why don't I ask you one last question? Because, again, I went long on that, as I always do. Actually, I think I've asked all the questions I have. There was one I had from Kieran Bannon official, which I think we covered, which was, did we get away with one yesterday? It felt like it could have finished 4-3 to City as much as us, but I kind of think we've covered that. So we've gone 80 minutes. I think that's pretty good going.
That was solid. I feel like that was a lot to get through, and it's nice that we know that we get to play the same team in 3 days' time.
Yeah, we get to do it all again in 3 days' time. And how do you feel about that game on the back of this one? Are you still confident?
Yeah, I think I am. If anything, I'm increasingly confident. I need to stop saying Katie McCabe's going to solve all our problems. I just think getting her body back is going to be very helpful. You're playing under the lights of Meadow Park. We know that what the Arsenal fans do at Meadow Park, the North Bank is roaring. I think that if you can get it over the line at Joey Stadium with thin numbers, you can get it over the line at Meadow Park, and it's the Subway Cup. It's basically the Arsenal Cup right now.
It's our competition. Yeah, I don't know how much Gareth Taylor's going to change anything, and so those weaknesses will still be there. However, City are a really good team. There are loads of good attackers. I think they'll probably play Viv and Bunny Shaw together. It's and we're not going to have a lot of players back, so I'm not taking anything for granted. But we'll see how that game goes on Thursday evening, and we will be back with another podcast for you on Monday next week after the game against Michelle Kang's London City Lionesses at Meadow Park in the FA Cup. Will be an interesting game, actually, because it's a championship team, but when you look at the names in that squad, it's not a championship team at the same time. So I think that's going to be, I think for LCL, I think they'll really like this game as well, because they'll really get to see where their level is at the moment. So looking forward to that one. And until then, thanks as ever, Jamie, for your insights.
Thanks for having me again, Tim. We'll see again what happens over the next 7 days. Yeah,
indeed. And no transfer deadline thrown in, which I'm quite grateful about, because it took a while to recover from Thursday. But yeah, really looking forward to the games this week. Hope that you are too, and we'll be back with another podcast next Monday. Until then, take it easy and bye-bye.